Well, this episode was awesome. There were definitely some twists in the dialogue and twists in the story that I wasn't expecting. Particularly, things that stood out this episode to me was the conversation between Obi-Wan and Leia about Padme, and how Leia can sense Obi-Wan isn't exactly telling her the whole truth. It's like, oh, you knew my mother, didn't you? Is like, my real mother. Kind of avoiding the question, That added some good emotion in this episode and expanded their dynamic. And I liked the conversation he had with her about how the Jedi are taken at a young age, and he can only remember glimpses of his family, and he thinks he had a brother. So that was an interesting bit of dialogue, how he may have had a brother. That better be setting something up, because why include that line if they're not going to follow through with it? So maybe we'll get to see a long-lost brother of Obi-Wan on the show, or who knows? I'm curious about why they included that line if they're not going to go through with it. We'll see. I also enjoyed the twist of one of the Imperial officers actually being a spy for the rebellion, and she ends up helping Obi-Wan and Leia. And also, little Easter eggs, I like that they name-dropped Quinlan Vos. If you don't know who that is, read the Star Wars novel that takes place during the Clone Wars show called Dark Disciple to really get a feel for who he is. He's kind of like a side character on the Clone Wars show, but they made him a main character in this book, and he's really cool in that book, so maybe he'll show up at the show, maybe he won't. Maybe it was just a name-drop Easter egg. Either way, I appreciated that. And of course, the big highlight of this episode was the second half, particularly the last 10 minutes, where we finally get to see Darth Vader in all his glory. Right from the very first scene he's in this episode, he's just as menacing as ever. Especially, I like that line, it's like, if you fail me, you will not live to regret it. That is such classic Vader. That is such classic Vader writing. And, as brutal as it was, the scene where he just starts indiscriminately killing the civilians, it was horrible to watch, but it showed how terrifying he is. And, of course, the big highlight of this episode was the rematch, if you want to call it that. It wasn't really a rematch because it was over with kind of quickly. But, we're only halfway through the show, so I'm sure we're going to get to see a rematch of a rematch between Kenobi and Vader. Even though it was short, it was still really awesome just to see them clashing lightsabers again. It was cool to see Obi-Wan kind of reuniting with Vader, and does he know that Anakin is Vader? Because he does say, look what you have turned me into, or, something like that. So maybe he's hinting that he is. Maybe he knows he's Vader, maybe he doesn't, I don't know. Either way, it was awesome to watch. Very excited to see what happens next week. And we're halfway through the show. This was episode 3 out of 6. This was the halfway point. So hopefully it can only get more epic from here. Let me know your thoughts on episode 3 of Obi-Wan, and I'll see you next time.